We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna. We're on text 11, Chapter 2, Canto 3. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswati vyasam tato jayamudiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nicham Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Utamashloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So text 11. Pradarsha Atapta Tapasam Avitripta Drisham Nrinam Adaya Anta Adhat Ya Tu Svabimbam Lokalochanam Pradarsya Tapta Tapasam Avitripta Drisham Nrinam Adayantar Adhadyastu Svabimbam Lokalochanam Pradarsya Tapta Tapasam Avitripta Drisham Nrinam Adayantar Adhadyastu Svabimbam Lokalochanam Pradarsya Tapta Tapasam Avitripta Drisham Nrinam Adayantar Adhadyastu Svabimbam Lokalochanam. Anyone online would like to chant?
Pradarsya Tapta Tapasam Avitapta Drisham
Nrinam
Adayantar
Adhadyastu
Svabimbam
Lokalochanam
Pradarsya Tapta Tapasam Avitripta Drisham
Nrinam
Adayantar Adhadyastu Svabimbam
Lokalochanam. Pradarsya, by exhibiting. Atapta, without undergoing. Tapasam, penances. Avitripta Drisham, without fulfillment of vision. Nrinam, of persons. Adaya, taking. Anta, disappearance. Adhat, performed,
performed,
ya,
ya,
he who,
he who,
to,
but,
svabimbam,
swabimbam,
his own form,
his own form,
lokalochanam,
lokalochalam,
public vision.
public vision.
Translation: Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who were unable to see him as he is due to not executing required penance. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In this verse, the word avitripta drisham is most significant. The conditioned souls in the material world are all trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they have failed to do so because it is impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. The example of the fish on land is very appropriate. If one takes a fish from the water and puts it on the land, it cannot be made happy by any amount of offered pleasure. The spirit soul can be happy only in the association of the supreme living being, the personality of Godhead, and nowhere else. The Lord, by his unlimited causeless mercy, has innumerable Vaikuntha planets in the Brahmagyoti sphere of the spiritual world. And in that transcendental world, there is an unlimited arrangement for the unlimited pleasure of the living entities. The Lord himself comes to display his transcendental pastimes, typically represented at Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka. He appears just to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead, back home to the eternal world. But for want of sufficient piety, the onlookers are not attracted by such pastimes of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety. By strict adherence to the prescribed principles for all orders of social life, one can attain the qualities of truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, forbearance, etc., and can be elevated to the plane of rendering pure devotional service to the Lord. Only by such a transcendental vision are one's material hankerings fully satisfied. When the Lord was present, persons who were able to satisfy their material hankerings by seeing him in true perspective were thus able to go back with him to his kingdom. But those persons who were unable to see the Lord as he is remained attached to material hankerings and were not able to go back home, back to Godhead. When the Lord passed beyond the vision of all, he did so in his original eternal form, as stated in this verse. The Lord left in his own body. He did not leave his body, as is generally misunderstood by the conditioned souls. This statement defeats the false propaganda of the faithless non-devotees that the Lord passed away like an ordinary condition, like an ordinary conditioned soul. The Lord appeared in order to release the world from the undue burden of the non-believing asuras, and after doing this, he disappeared from the world's eyes. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur and Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditam Stra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopi Shah Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 11. Pradarshya tapasam avitripta drisham rinam adayantar adadyastu sabimbam lokalochanam. Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who were unable to see him as he is, due to not executing required penance. Yes. Yeah. Hare Krishna. So in the purport, there's this sentence that Prabhupada writes at the end of the first paragraph, and in that transcendental world, there is an unlimited arrangement for the unlimited pleasure of the living entities. Okay, so I'm reminded of a purport in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, purport to Yadgatvanandi Vartante, Bhavaka and the Shashika, where Krishna says in the spiritual realm, there's no need for fire, electricity, sun, moon, everything self-effulgent. Prabhupada writes in the purport, one should be captivated by this information. Like it's like a travel brochure attracting us to go there. Just like for any place on this planet, you can get travel brochures. So there's an unlimited arrangement for the unlimited pleasure of the living entities. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. We practice the process following the regulative principles in that way, coming towards sattva gun, coming towards sattva, and then we have then the miseries of the material world, the inherent disturbance of the material world are minimized, and positively hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, and yes, serving the deities, serving Srila Prabhupada, and then yes, and then the positive bliss of the soul is ever expanding, and that's, Prabhupada earlier in the purport gives the fish in the water. Right? Our water is eternity. Our water is eternity. And if one takes the fish from the water and puts it on the land, it cannot be made happy by any amount of offered pleasure. So this is Uddhava speaking to the Dwara. He's talking about the disappearance pastime of Lord Krishna. So spirit means eternal. Right? We're only going to be satisfied with eternal pleasures, eternal. Buddha, that happiness that doesn't have a beginning and end. It's not just superfluous titillation. It's not just superficial external gratification that has a beginning and end. And even if it did go on and on, it's not satisfying for the soul. It's not satisfying for the soul. So Uddhava talks about Lord Sri Krishna manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth. So actually the forms of God are eternal. Our spiritual form is eternal. And through the process of bhakti, we discover it. It becomes revealed. So, right. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Avajanati Mamura Manushintanmashrita Parabhavajanata Mamabhuta Maheshwaram, that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. Right? They think like I'm an ordinary person. They don't understand my supreme nature. Tribir Guna Mayar Bhava Evi Sarva Idam Jagat. They don't understand. So Krishna's form is eternal, and then sometimes in the form of Krishna, he reveals it. He reveals it. Let's call it on this plane. He reveals the form on this material plane, and in order to realize and see eternal form, so that requires eyes tinged with the salve of love. There was a text in the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Vidayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Chintya Gunasvarupam Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. Lord Brahma prays, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is Shamasundar, Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes, and who the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So, and so this idea, because, okay, there can be some idea that if we can't see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it doesn't exist. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And then on the other side, well, and if I can see it, then it must be limited. So both are misconceptions. Misconceptions, right? So if I can't see it, it must not exist. And that, yeah, it's like a basic, like, ignorant sort of mindset. I only believe what I can see, which we know that's completely not true. If we actually were to interview anyone, and they need to admit, well, of course, I believe in so many things I don't see. Do you believe in atoms? Yes. Have you ever seen an atom? No. Well, it means I trust authority. Prabhupada often emphasizes seeing is overrated. Okay. We get our knowledge from hearing, even material knowledge. Do you believe the Himalayan mountains exist? Well, of course. So you've seen them? Well, not personally, but I've had friends who visited there. I saw on a TV documentary. Okay, so you trust the producers of the documentary. You trust these friends. Again, we're not criticizing. We're just illustrating. So, right. So now there is a process. There is a process. Just like, okay, do you believe the President of the United States exists? Well, yes. Have you ever seen him? No. Okay, but I could see him. I mean, there's a process, right? Yeah. So there's you need to go through the secretary and make an application and write something to convince that it's worth the president's 30 minutes of time to see you. I mean, there's a process. There's a process to see someone. So similarly, yeah. So similarly, Krishna says to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, Saiva yamayate yogo prokta pratana bhaktosi me sakachiti rasya me tadutama. He says, Arjuna, yeah, I'm revealing this knowledge to you. You're capable to have realization of this transcendental mystery, so that it's not a mystery, because you're my devotee and my friend. Bhakti mama vijanti yavanyashtasmi tatvata tatamam tatvata vavishte tadanantram. So Krishna says, through the process of bhakti, not jnana, not karma, through the process of bhakti, then you can realize me. Okay. And then you can realize me. And so to the extent we give ourselves to the process, then we have that, let's call it that super dimensional seeing. And we can see that which is beyond mundane mind and and intelligence. Superdimensionalness, yeah, again, in like modern empirical science, that concept is taken for granted, that there are dimensions of reality, even material reality, that we have no access to with our current senses. There's way back many decades ago, I saw a video by a TV show from Carl Sagan. He was a physicist who kind of made like science entertaining and that sort of thing. And right, so he gave the example of flatlanders, right? Like flatlanders, they existed in 2 dimensions, length and width. So let's say a ball appeared in flatland. Okay, so the ball would be perceived as like a line. It would be like a shadow line. That's all, because they can't perceive 3 dimensions. So, or yeah, that's it. So this, the form of Krishna, eternality. And this eternality, I think it's important. Eternality, we can think of it in terms of like a really, really, really long time. But that's not really the conception that we get from Bhagavatam. Eternality, it means outside of time altogether. Outside of time altogether, right? So in the Hebrew Bible starts Bereshit bara Elohim et Shamayim v'et. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Okay, which means that God is the creator of time. Is the creator of time, and that's there all over the Bhagavatam. It's there right in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, right? So time, yes, right. So God creates time. God creates space, which means that God is transcendental. God exists outside of time and space, because Krishna is the source of time and space. So eternality, just like, okay, so the material modes of nature, okay, right? There's the Mahatattva, and that's like the Pradhan, like the big primordial soup, not just on this planet, but all of the material universes. And then then time starts moving. Time starts moving the Pradhan, right? The whole Pradhan, just the unamalgamated soup of material energy. It's called Mahatattva, and time starts moving it, and then the 3 modes start to. Then it becomes Prakriti. Prakriti is Pradhan with the different forms, like the forms of this body, the forms of the planets, and the forms of all the material bodies. Okay, so the modes of nature are moving things. And so time, like, okay, so time path, so because of time, things get created, rajas. Because of time, things get destroyed, tamas. Okay, right. So the Vaikuntha atmosphere, that's what's described here, eternity, means a place without rajas or tamas. And the sattva is Shuddha sattva. It's not material sattva, which is tinged by rajas and tamas. So yeah, right. So that's what it means. Like each moment exists eternally, right? Because there's no rajas. Nothing gets created. Everything's existing eternally. There's no tamas. Nothing gets destroyed. And so all of the forms, all of the pastimes, all of the qualities are eternal, and we're invited and encouraged and enticed, inviting and inciting and enticing us to, like, yeah, let me go there. And as you know, we like to emphasize, go there. Sure, there is a geography to it, and maybe more importantly, it's a consciousness. And you know, and we've all had experience, like when we're immersed, like sattva means presence. right? Rajas, we got like anxiety, grungy, and tamas, we got like maybe some depression, grungy, and lamenting about the past, and Shokchati, Nakankshati, Brahmabhuta. So Sattva is like presence, and we've all had experience like fully present. And then it's like, we use the word, it's like timeless, right? Like I wasn't even keeping track of how much time passed. In some of our seminars, we require that, like no timepieces, because we don't want, what time's lunch? How big we want for an hour or 2 hours? We just in just full presence, Yes, it's so yeah, and so so each pastime exists eternally. And so sometimes Krishna in his original form of Shyamasundar, the graceful threefold bending form of Shyamasundar, Krishna reveals it to the flatlanders, we can say, and then his disappearance is simply removing his form. There could be different stories about Krishna's disappearance, but basically he chose to remove his form from the sight, from the sight of those, on this plane. And so Srila Prabhupada, he references the Gita verse, Tesham drata gatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanvan nityasatvisto. Yes, then the verse ends with drita vrata. Then in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So that can sometimes be difficult to understand. Like, okay, so I can't engage in bhakti yoga until I'm completely in sattva, completely free from sinful reaction, complete pious. It can be misunderstood that way, or incomplete, because that's there. It's Bhagavad Gita. But then, like right now in our Bhagavad Gita course, we're studying the second part of chapter 18, and that quintessential verse from Bhagavad Gita: Saradaman prityagya mamekam sharanam vraja am tam sarapapebhyo mokshaya shami mashucha. So Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion. Which means abandon all yoga systems, all personal growth processes, abandon all processes, and just surrender into me. Not that those processes are useless, karma yoga, jnana yoga. Those processes are all serving bhakti, bringing the spirit soul to bhakti. And Prabhupada mentions that the entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety. But Krishna says, and then I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions. Mashucha, be fearless. Don't worry. Right? I got your back. I'm with you. Okay. I'll take care of you for the eternal bliss of the soul in a secure way. So, and Prabhupada says in the purport to that, Bhagavad Gita 18.66, he says, and because he mentions in that purport, just like he's mentioning this purport, that verse at the end of the 7th chapter, that he had to engage in devotional service, one needs to be completely, pious and all, free from sinful reaction. But Prabhupada says that, from wherever we're at, we engage in Krishna's service, and then we become purified. So both processes are true, and they interrelate. That let's give ourselves with dedication to purify our habits, to purify our thoughts, to purify our habits, follow the regulative principles. And we focus a lot on like sattvic speech and sattvic listening, and cleanliness, the Brahminical. Let's focus on that, because the more we cultivate sattvic habits, lifestyle, thoughts, then the more we're naturally cleanly enthused to embrace the transcendental process of devotional service. And at the same time, the principle of, okay, from wherever I'm at, I had like yesterday, I had like a really non-sattvic today, no transformation happened. Whatever, from wherever we're at, connect with that transcendental process of bhakti. Bhakti is transcendental. Transcendental. It's not dependent on any material mode, including sattva. Savai pumsam parodharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje aituke pratita yatma suprasidati. Yes, so whatever we're doing, it's meant to bring us to attraction to the eternal, transcendent personality of Godhead, to that transcognitive realm. And from wherever we're at, we're sincere. We're sincere. I want to serve Prabhupada. I want to serve Krishna. Let me chant Hare Krishna. Then whatever modes we were entangled in the moment before, they cannot get in the way. Nothing material can get in the way. And so both principles. So not to neglect cultivation of regulative principles and sattvic habits about rising and resting and all areas of life, and not to neglect that, because that's a foundation for steadily embracing Krishna consciousness. And from wherever we're at, take to devotional service now. It doesn't need to wait. Akama sarvakama moksha daradi tifreni bhakti yogena yajita pushampara. That whatever, we got so many material desires, and we just want to escape from material desires, we want some devotion, whatever. We're encouraged, intensely engage in devotional service. When? Now. And of course, a cornerstone practice of devotional service, a similar verse also from the second canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Etanyir vidyamananam ichatam akatobayam yoginam ripiniritam haranamanu kirtanam. That again, whatever our desires, tamas, rajas, whatever our self-deceptions and toxic habits, whatever we're wanting, it's Shukadeva Goswami encourages, yoginam vipinyuntam haranama, engage in kirtan, sattam kityantramam yatam tascha jugdavrita namashantaschamam bhaktya nityukta upasate. To chant Hare Krishna, chant the names of God. When? Now. Chant the names of God. And we're not spontaneously on the platform where that's naturally what I want to do 24 hours a day. Discuss Chaitanya Charitamrita, chant Hare Krishna. That's why we have the regulative principles of freedom. So we're encouraged, okay, make some commitment. Commitment means like, okay, it means discipline is like, it means like, I'm not going to be a slave to the whims of my mind. At least I'm going to chant these 16 rounds per day, or 2 rounds, or 5 rounds. Make some commitment. Okay, at least 2 hours a week, I'm going to read Prabhupada's books. So that commitment supports us to rise to the platform of spontaneously wanting devotion and towards entering that spontaneous play of loving devotion, which is that's where Uddhava is at, that spontaneous play of loving devotion. Now he's immersed in the spontaneous play of loving devotion, and right now in that he's experiencing much sadness and grief, remembering Lord Krishna's disappearance. And that sadness and grief, it's permeated by ever blissful spiritual rasa. Okay, so it's not material sadness and grief. So many things in this verse and purport. Now, okay, another thing that comes to me. So Prabhupada writes, when the Lord passed beyond the vision of all, he did so in his original eternal form, as stated in this verse. The Lord left in his own body. He did not leave his body, as is generally misunderstood by the conditioned souls. This statement defeats the false propaganda of the faithless non-devotees that the Lord passed away like an ordinary conditioned soul. Okay. Yeah, so the faithless non-devotees, Prabhupada often, as you know, we're aware, Prabhupada often, he's like, that here in like a scholarly way, he's cautioning us about like those who comment on Srimad Bhagavatam, comment on Krishna's Bhagavad Gita, and their goal is to take Krishna out of his Bhagavad Gita. And sometimes Prabhupada gets very fiery when he does that, and very angry, fiery. We can, just imagine, just like we imagine someone who's dear to us, someone who we're relating with, someone who's near and dear to us, and we have a personal relation, and someone else says, "Oh yes, they actually have no hands and no legs, and they can't walk, and they don't really exist. Only the unborn within them exists." And it's like, well, this is a very ugly statement. It's very offensive. It's very offensive. And like I'm like, this is very poisonous. This is very poisonous. So again, Sri Krishna, very, very dear friend, the most dear friend for Srila Prabhupada. And when different commentators are trying to take Krishna out of his own Gita, it's like gross. It's very gross. And it's not just about them, but they're influencing millions of people, millions of people through this Nirvishesha Shunyavad philosophies that the Supreme has no qualities. And again, it's not just philosophical. Here, Prabhupada presenting in a philosophical way. Sometimes you can see he's like he takes it personally. When someone's like saying the personality of Godhead Krishna is just a historical figure, just an ordinary conditioned soul, like that. Yes. Okay. All right, I'll read this verse again. This is text 11, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Srimad Bhagavatam. Pradarshitapta tapasam vitripta drishabrinam arayanta adadyastu svabimbam lokalochanam. Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who were unable to see him as he is due to not executing required penance. Any questions or comments at this time? Yeah, this revealed, like, okay, just like a progression often giving is like the easiest way to encounter eternity, to begin to realize our eternal nature. And Krishna's eternal nature is through the name, So like Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is everywhere. And we realize Krishna's presence in our hearts, Krishna's presence everywhere through this process of devotional service, and especially on the foundation of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we've had some talks recently in our morning programs about sound. Krishna's name is eternal, God's and all of God's names are eternal. Nam Nama Kri Bahoda Nija Sarva Shaktista Trapitanyamite Smarani Nakala. And so God's names are eternal. And it's just like through through the mechanical contraption of our tongue and lips and teeth and the vocal cords, then we're like shining light to reveal the names, which are to reveal, just like, it's in a sense, it's not that our speech mechanism is the source of the names. Just like, it's like if there's a dark room, well, the furniture is there and the sofa is there and the carpet's there and the wall decorations are there. It's all there, but then a light, we have a flashlight, the light reveals what's there. So Krishna's form is there and Krishna's name is there eternally. And then through this mechanism of speech, we are shining light for the revelation of this eternal form. And really, like Vidura, Srila Prabhupada, Shukadev Goswami, Vasudev, they're imploring us out of care for us. They want us like, get attracted to the eternal. That's an unlimited arrangement for unlimited pleasure of the living entities. Like be convinced of this and give your life there. Hare Krishna. Malini.
In a purport, he said, the entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety.
Yeah.
And by strict adherence to the prescribed principle for all orders of social life, one can attain the qualities of truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, forbearance, etc. So it seems like what you were saying, we don't really have time. Like here, it seems like, okay, first we need piety. And then when we have piety, then we can develop truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, and forbearance. And the acharyas and Srila Prabhupads and all the sages, they say that's best to come to a place of piety and all those qualities. And then if we don't have really more than 60 years and so far from those, we can jump there from wherever we are at. So that was very helpful for me. Something I know and I hear a lot, but somehow today it was perfect. And I was curious about what forbearance is. I'm not clear about that. It's like forgiveness, is that, and tolerance, what forbearance? It seems that it's a mix of all those qualities.
Yeah, well, thanks for your comments, Melanie. Yeah, so we're encouraged to develop piety and and that's the regular principles and it's stressed, from wherever we're at, whatever the apparent mixture of the modes of nature, engage in Krishna service. Serve Srila Prabhupada's mission, do it now, chant Hare Krishna. Forbearance, I think that describes it pretty well. It defines it. Like some mixture, I think of forbearance as practically a synonym of tolerance, but maybe a combination of tolerance and forgiveness. Like, kind of, forbearance can mean like if we're insulted, that we don't let that deviate us from enthusiastically, joyfully engaging in devotional service. Forbearance can also mean that, like, Matras Parshas Tukante Ashitoshna Sukadukada Agamapaino Yishas Tamsti Tiksas about like it's really cold or it's really hot, or the whether it's it means the disturbances of the material world, whether disturbance from other people, disturbances from climate, from natural conditions, the different disturbance we forbear. Yami Navyatiante Te Pusham Pushar Shaba Samaduka Sakam to Dhira Govinda Kapate. Krishna says, one who's forbearing, one who's not disturbed in material happiness and distress and is steady in both. That's this consciousness for liberation. Yeah, yeah. Kim writes long suffering. Yeah, long suffering. That's another way to say it in English.
Could you, I'm not understanding the long suffering part. What does that mean? Like forbearance is like, it's not simply, okay, a temporary insult, okay, I tolerate, but it's like suffering that go on for years and years and years like that. That's what you mean?
Well, it's an expression in English, but yeah, it means that it indicates that it's like Tom's Titikshas for Bharata, that even though there's one disturbance after the next, maybe from different people or different life conditions, one disturbance after the next, and it's a way to say, and all. So the equanimous soul, the self-realized soul, the devotional soul, I'll suffer them without complaining, without complaining. I'll tolerate them. If there's so many disturbances, I'm not going to be disturbed. I'll suffer them without complaining, without complaining doesn't mean going into a martyr thing. No, it's okay. But it means like, I'm suffering them, but internally I'm not disturbed. I continue with the devotional service. Yeah, Kim writes, it's biblical in source. So it's like an English expression, which it doesn't mean that someone's affected by the suffering.
It seems that it's a devotee quality.
Yeah.
Because being in the material world for the soul is eternally, it's suffering. For the soul to be in the material world, like if there is suffering, if there is no suffering, if there is a sattva or if there is no sattva, for the soul is all negative suffering. And then that quality of forbearance, like it's acceptance for the soul, that that's where I put myself and I'm going to accept. It's kind of being in the prison, and instead of fighting the prison system and only thinking of getting out of the prison, is like, okay, I'm here because of my action, and I accept the suffering of being in that condition.
Yeah, in our Vedic part, like the Pandavas and Queen Kunti, they were long suffering. They were forbearing, right? Yeah, it wasn't just for 10 minutes or something, but like for years, 13 years in the forest. So they were long suffering. They retained their devotional enthusiasm, all their devotional qualities, despite so many injustices.
And then if there's no other people who want to ask question, you spoke about time, and that was very relevant for me also. Time I'm not sure, because at the creation, time and the three mode of material nature, they kind of come at the same time. It seems like it says that the three mode of material nature are activated by time. And sometimes it says that like time is manifesting to the three mode of material nature or something like that. But there is a connection between the two. And today in your class, you kind of highlighted that connection. And I wonder if you will say more, because I can see how, it's the suffering is attachment to future or present or past, but it really from the present moment, it seems that in general there is not that much suffering, regardless of the situation we are in.
Yeah, thanks for that. Right, yeah. Well, I'm just reminded again from that statement from the purport that in the transcendental world, there is an unlimited arrangement for the unlimited pleasure of the living entities. So transcendental world, we can experience the transcendental world here. And a way to see it is like, like if we're completely sattva, completely present, then sure, the disturbances of the material energy go on, but we're not disturbed. The disturbance is because we're lamenting about the past. We're hankering in anxiety for a particular future. We're misidentifying with the material body. Yaya sama hito jivo atmakam chi gunatmakam. Vyasadeva saw we're misidentifying with that all the suffering of the living entities because of misidentification with the body made of three modes of nature, atmakam chi gunatmakam. And so so Prabhupada uses that term in spiritual life. Time is conspicuous by its absence. So that means complete spiritual sattva, Shuddha sattva, complete spirit, and that's the platform of devotional service. And for me again, I stated that earlier, but so time means creation, destruction, creation, destruction. And that's Rajas creation, Tamas destruction. So completely present. It means like we're not influenced by that. So what's the verse? Ayor pum sam. There's that verse in the Bhagavatam about sunrise, sunset, right? It diminishes the lifespan of all living entities except the devotee, because the devotional soul is living on that timeless platform. It means the devotional soul is doing what the realized soul does in eternity. And again, eternity doesn't mean a very, very long time. Eternity means outside that whole 9 dots of time, right? It's just like an example that comes to me is like if we're dreaming or something, like if we're dreaming. So in the dream, there's this whole kind of conception. Yeah, well, in the dream, well, I did that. And then he ran there, and then a monster did this. And then something happened very long time. There's this whole world in the dream, whole world in the dream. But the actual person lying on the bed or the people in the room, they exist outside of the whole time in the dream. So maybe within the dream, something happened a long time ago. So it's described. So Prabhupada uses the term from time immemorial. Time immemorial. Again, it just means like it happened so long ago. You can't even trace it back. Like there's trillions and trillions of quadrillions of lifetimes of Brahma. But the soul's eternal. So even that time immemorial, that's just like within the dream, there's this thing called time. But the soul acts outside of that. And so to get out of dream life, and we get to do that here. We discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just share. Yesterday, I spent some time with Sita, my daughter Sita. So we hadn't talked in a while. So mostly instigated by her for like the whole 2 hours. We basically talked about Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that felt good. So it was like this timeless thing. Yeah, okay. We talked about the 15th chapter of the Madhya Lila Chaitanya Charitamrita and the different pastimes there. So that's what the soul does. That's not influenced by Rajas and Tamas. That's what the soul does, who's absorbed in eternal time, where every song's a dance, every word's a song, every step's a dance. The soul glorifies Krishna, Satatam Kirtan, but Kirtan all the time, serve Krishna. So we practice that in this body. And then we notice, we experience Pratyakshavagamanganya. We're less disturbed by the disturbances of the world because we're engaging in that which we're not engaging that which furthers the illusion that we are this body made of Rajas and Tamas. So to this Bhakti Yoga that Prabhupada's giving us, representing the timeless Vedas, we're practicing in this body to act in that timeless trans-phenomenal realm.
I really like that eternity doesn't mean a very, very long time, because a very, very long time sounds very boring.
Yeah.
And so
Oh.
eternity means like timelessness. And in those moments of timelessness, there is only presence and fulfillment and satisfaction and full 100% participation and experience.
Yeah, right. And because there's no, that's why each moment exists eternally, right? There's no rajas to create another moment. There's no tamas to destroy it. It's conspicuous by its absence. And so, and then that gets, we can realize it through devotional service, but it's inconceivable to the material intelligence, which is conditioned by that dreamlike time. Yeah.
We can realize and experience it within this body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Malini.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I welcome if there's any other sharing, comments, or questions at this time. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.